Welcome to this Memorial Day weekend and today's episode of The Truth, as we remember those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for our country. Today is the day to honor the men and women who gave their lives in the service of our country and the establishment of our freedoms, from the battlefields of Gettysburg to the streets of Baghdad. Their sacrifice secure our freedoms that we continue to enjoy today. And we're not far from the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States. While many of us will enjoy barbecues and times with family, let's pause today at 3 p.m. to remember those who never made it home. Their courage bought our tomorrows. Take a moment today to thank a veteran, to visit a memorial, or simply reflect on our privileges of freedom. Well, today's broadcast in our studio actually is brought to you by Bone Frog Coffee. They too celebrate Memorial Day as a celebration for the many who served and are still serving, but more importantly, in a time of remembrance and observation for those who gave the ultimate price for our freedom. Bone Frog Coffee's mission is rooted in honoring the fallen and keeping their names and stories alive. They are our partner and studio sponsor. We'll talk more about Bone Frog in just a little bit, but let's get into today's program. We've got a good one for you. Oh boy, did Trump go on a tear this past week or what? I mean, he was all over X. I mean, he would not stop. Oh yeah, right behind me is where he lives. If you can see it over my right shoulder there to your left, that's Mar-a-Lago. Our studio is just across the Intercoastal from Mar-a-Lago. But Trump was all over Thomas Massie, and we printed out a bunch of Trump's tweets. I mean, they are basically, if you put them together, they constitute just a rant. And so I can't read them all to you because it would consume the broadcast, which, by the way, is coming to you on the John Fredericks Media Network today and cdm.press and all across the World Wide Web on Rumble and Getter and YouTube Live and Facebook Live, X and Instagram. You can go to one of those outlets right now and watch the live stream, and you too will be able to get the shot of Mar-a-Lago in the background. If you're on the radio, all I can tell you, it's a beautiful day here in West Palm Beach. We're outside on our terrace overlooking the Intercoastal and Mar-a-Lago. It is a beautiful sight indeed. So feel free to go to one of those websites. Getter is a good one, and Rumble. You can watch us live there, and you can also interact with us on Rumble on the live chat and let us know what you're thinking. Well, Tom Massie of Kentucky is no longer or soon to be no longer a member of Congress. He lost his race. Trump described him as the worst, most unreliable Republican congressman in the history of our country. Is an even bigger insult to our nation than Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, who also lost his seat in the U.S. Senate. Trump saying he suffered an unprecedented loss by not being able to run in the Republican primary. This is the first time anything has happened like that to a sitting U.S. senator. That's what you get when you vote to impeach an innocent man, especially one who made it possible for Cassidy to win his Senate seat. Trump does not like disloyal people. He said very disloyal, but Tom Massie, a major sleazebag, is even worse. Kentucky got this loser out of politics in Tuesday's election. And this is the part that I squirmed over. He is nicknamed Rand Paul Jr., another real beauty, because of his absolute terrible voting habits. Well, the tweets go on. I'm not going to read any more. That one kind of summarizes the whole group of tweets. I don't know, what would you say, Anthony? There a dozen, 15 tweets that you printed out for us. horrible Thomas Massie put out an old endorsement from many years ago of him by me, long before I found out that he was the worst congressman in the history of the country. Well, here's what Tom Massie had to say in his concession speech.
I would have come out sooner, but I had to call my opponent and concede, and it took a while to find Ed Gallrein in Tel Aviv. You know, welcome to the most expensive congressional primary ever in the 250-year history of this country.
So Massie, in that clip, is inferring that Israel had a say in Trump's endorsement of his opponent. And I worry about that. I mean, you know, Tucker and President Trump have had a major split because of that very topic. Tucker doesn't feel that Israel should have such an influence on America's politics. Now, I don't know the extent to which Israel influenced Trump or influenced Thomas Massie's defeat, but I have mixed feelings about this one. Now, this guy in Louisiana, what is his name? That Trump also went out. Oh, Cassidy. Yeah, I'm fine with Cassidy going. I mean, to vote for Trump's impeachment, that was in Trump 1.0, is inexcusable, unforgivable. After Trump endorsed him and helped him get elected to the U.S. Senate, I'm fully with Trump on that. But look, you know, I think Massie had a lot of good points. He was in favor of release of the Epstein files. He did vote with Rand Paul on the big, beautiful bill and opposes the out-of-control federal government spending. And so, you know, you got Cassidy who voted to impeach Trump. No excuse. The unforgivable sin. We now know that the impeachment was fake, that it was based on a false premise. So, sorry, you made a mistake. Former Senator Massie, you're paying a price. But former Senator Cassidy, but Massie had more disagreements with Trump on policy. And you know how the Democrats always stand together, all 200 and whatever number of them? I mean, you would think that some of them would have independent thought. I mean, don't you admire Fetterman when he comes out and criticizes his own party and just speaks the truth? And don't you think that's healthy? I mean, I certainly do. We like it when one of the Democrats get off the party line and just speak the truth. And that's why I like Fetterman. I wouldn't vote for him, but I do appreciate his candor and his truthfulness and his willingness to depart from his own party to speak the truth. And so I think when the tables are turned and a member of our own party disagrees with our president, that they should be permitted to do so without this kind of consequence, without being primaried. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she obviously had her own experience with Trump similarly. Trump said, "I'm going to primary you." And she said, "No, you're not. I quit." Like, "I'm going to fire you." "No, you're not going to fire me because I quit." Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene.
The reason that President Trump turned on both of us, because Thomas Massie, myself, Lauren Boebert, and Nancy Mace, we were the only Republicans that signed the discharge petition forcing that resolution to the House floor for a vote to release the Epstein files.
So was Tom Massie that bad? Did he deserve to be primaried? Well, you know, there are a lot of think tanks in Washington that rate congressmen. The Freedom Index evaluates how a congressman votes relative to the U.S. Constitution, they found that Tom Massie on constitutional issues voted 119 times correctly in line with the Constitution, and only two times against what they considered to be a constitutional issue. They gave him a 100% scorecard in the last session of Congress and a 99 lifetime freedom score. So I think that's pretty darn good. Then the Heritage Action Group, which is a branch of Heritage Foundation, a very conservative think tank, in this 119th session of Congress gave Massie a 94% approval rating among the House Republicans and an 83% lifetime score. So that's a solid B average. You know, Marjorie Taylor Greene, in that clip, she made it clear that she thinks that Trump was upset with both her and Massie over the Epstein files. I mean, Mr. President, the vote to release the Epstein files was almost unanimous, Democrat and Republicans alike. So have we accomplished anything by getting rid of Tom Massie? I mean, it may make you feel good, but I'm conflicted on that. The only reason I say I'm conflicted is because every time I've said anything in the past that where I've questioned Trump, it turns out in the long run that he was right and I was mistaken. So is this another one of those occasions? I'm not sure. But I think that our party should stick together. But I think also that members of our party should be able to voice their opinion without fear of retribution and without fear of being primaried. Up until a point. That point is where Matt Cassidy voted to impeach Trump, as I said earlier. So I'm not down with that, and I'm conflicted on whether I think Massie should have been primaried. And I largely say that also because I am squarely in Rand Paul's court when it comes to government spending. It is off the rails, off the chain, irresponsible. There will be a tipping point if it doesn't stop. Trump's got a different plan. His plan, I mean, he is increasing a lot of spending. Like in defense, we've gone from 800 million to $1 trillion now, and he wants to up it even more to like $1.25 trillion in the next budget. I've got reservations about that, but I also think Trump knows that China is catching up. They're nowhere near our commitment to their own defense, but they are spending more and more. They have built their Navy, and they are also sending satellites into space. So you got to think that that we're not the only one that has our Space Force. So I think I defer to Trump on the spending, but I also think that he has a plan to outrun the debt. And it could work. I mean, if you increase the standard of living and our GDP to a level, a new level, an unprecedented level, and AI and robotics and autonomous vehicles may well be the stimulus to get us there, then the plan may work. It may actually work. The other rub is Trump wants to lower interest rates. And I don't think that you can lower interest rates in today's environment. That's the reason he got rid of Jerome Powell. Some people are thinking that the Fed is going to be necessary for them to increase interest rates so as not to send us into an inflationary acceleration mode. And with the kind of spending that our federal government continues to do, that's a real risk. So where is that going to leave the president with his new chairman of the Federal Reserve? We'll just have to wait and see. But I think there is going to be real tension there before it's all said and done. Of course, inflation is basically a tax. That is another strategy. That's what we did after World War II, and all the spending that the government engaged in then created tremendous debt, and they just paid it off by printing money and pumping it into the monetary system, into the economy, and that created huge inflation. So the idea is that you borrow $1 today, but you pay it off with inflated dollars tomorrow. And so how much inflation are you willing to accept in order to service the debt is a way of looking at it. I just think that with all the fraud, waste, and abuse that Elon Musk and DOJ exposed us to, and the fraud that Nick Shirley has uncovered, a 23-year-old with an iPhone camera and a microphone, where are our leaders? Where are the people that we've entrusted to make the right decisions? And I'll just tell you, I'm going to say it, I'm a little worried about Trump. He is not showing the resolve that he did before he got elected. And I am concerned that the deep state may be influencing him. And I'm more concerned that the deep state may be scaring him. Because there are things that I'm seeing that don't add up to me. I mean, of all the people in the United States that should be concerned about Butler, one would think that Donald Trump would be the most concerned. One would think that he would really want to know about what really happened in the Washington Hilton 2 weeks ago at the White House press dinner. There's a video of a explosive sniffing dog standing in front of the doorway and his handler engaging in a conversation with someone on the other side of the door. And then the dog handler steps back, and within a second, the shooter rushes out. Now that's just sketchy. That doesn't make sense. What else doesn't make sense is that 8 or 10 or a dozen Secret Service agents couldn't hit this alleged shooter at point blank range. So what is going on? What is it about? I mean, I've still got questions about Butler, major questions about Butler. Major questions like, was it Thomas Matthew Crooks? Our listeners know I don't think it was, or I'm open to receiving information that it was not. There are a lot of questions about Butler. And a nagging question I've got, and I haven't said this on the air until now, but a nagging question that I've got is, could a AR-15 graze one's ear and scar it without just ripping it completely off the side of the head? I don't know. I don't know. A lot of pundits have questioned whether that's possible. And I'm glad the president is safe. I would say, I would ask the question, was it staged? But then I think about Corey Compouture losing his life in that theater. Is it possible that people would be so demonic that it could be staged? I don't think Donald Trump is. I don't. And so that's why I accept most of the story that we've been told. I accept that President Trump was hit on his ear. I'm open to receiving more information about it. and maybe changing my mind. So I have a curiosity about it, but on balance, I say, yeah, someone took a crack at him in Butler. I don't subscribe to the narrative that it was Thomas Matthew Crooks. So our listeners have heard me say many times, I think Maxwell Urich was a more likely suspect, but we'll save that for later at this juncture. Well, Trump tweeted up a storm in the Georgia election as well. I tell you, now what happened in Georgia is a cause for celebration, but Trump tweeted out just before the election, just before Election Day, highly respected and very popular Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, you may remember he was just on The Truth last Saturday, is running to be Georgia's next governor. A very special place to me in that we had a big presidential election win on November the 5th, 2024 in Georgia. As the first member of the Georgia State Assembly to endorse Donald J. Trump for president, Burt was strongly committed to my campaign in 2016, 2020, and 2024 and worked tirelessly to help us win. He has been with us from the beginning. I know his family well and have seen Burt tested at the most difficult levels and times. He is a warrior, a successful businessman. Well, let me tell you, he kicked his opponents' butts. Rick Jackson trailed 6 points in the primary. Burt didn't win enough votes to win without a runoff, but he took a commanding lead over Rick Jackson, and the tens of millions of dollars that he spent and the tens of millions of dollars that unidentified anonymous PAC spent tearing down Burt Jones. Brad Raffensperger, adios. I would say amigo, but you ain't no amigo of mine. I am so glad to be rid of you in Republican politics. You are out of here, just like your friend Chris Do-Nothing Carr. And we really cleaned out the barn on Tuesday of this week with some people that really needed to go, and including, I'm still celebrating over the fact that Jeff Duncan, he is a has-been. He failed as a Republican, and now he has failed as a Democrat. And Keisha Lance Bottoms, who is a friend of mine on a personal level, but ain't no friend of mine in politics, is the Democratic nominee for governor in Georgia. She kicked butt and really just annihilated Jeff Duncan. It's high time for him, Raffensperger, and Carr to exit stage left. I think the mosaic is now complete. So then we've got a runoff now between Burt Jones and Rick Jackson coming up soon in the month of June. And we also have a runoff between Dooley, who is the Kemp endorsed candidate for the U.S. Senate, and the congressman from Jackson, Georgia, Collins. So Dooley and Collins will have a runoff. Collins got more votes than Dooley, but in Georgia you have to win 50% plus one. I was really a little surprised that it wasn't a closer race, frankly, but Congressman Collins ran a good campaign and came out on top. Trump went on to say in his tweet on Burt Jones that Burt had been a proven leader and had courage and wisdom to deliver strong results for the incredible people of Georgia and the nation. As your next governor, Burt Jones will fight hard to grow the economy, cut taxes and reduce regulations, promote Made in America, champion American energy dominance, continue to secure our now secure southern border, strengthen our military and veterans, ensure law and order, and advance election integrity. Do you know what this creep Raffensperger did on his way out? I'm sure if you're in Georgia, you know that, but if you are listening to us in Nashville, Richmond, Norfolk, Lynchburg, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, or Morristown, or across the CDM platform, or across the World Wide Web, you may not know that this snake, Brad Raffensperger, who is still the Secretary of State, but not for much longer, decided that he was going to aggregate all the votes in a secret bunker away from the media, Republican and Democratic observers, and he even kicked out the Georgia Elections Board, which is an official government entity charged with conducting elections or supervising elections. So some people filed an action for a restraining order against Raffensperger to restrain him from counting the ballots in secret, or for aggregating them in secret, to be more accurate. Well, the judge correctly ruled and said, no, you can't do that. It's against the law. Well, guess what happened 2 hours later? The same judge changed his mind. So it was against the law at noon, but not against the law at 2 o'clock. What is going on? It's just absolutely mind-boggling. And these judges, these activist judges, Brian Amaro, and then the judge who we're going to talk about in just a little bit with Gordon Favorito. He is the founder of Voter GA. He's the co-founder of Voter GA. And Garland and I had a really good in-depth conversation about these activist judges, including Amaro, then the other judge, McAfee, who was the judge in the Fonnie Willis case. And then I'm straining to remember the judge's name that had the election integrity suit. He's the one that threw David Perdue out, said he didn't have standing, just like Amaro said that electors didn't have standing. Both of those cases went up to the Supreme Court. The judge, whose name I'm trying to remember, it'll come to me. If it doesn't come to me, it'll come to producer Anthony. He's over there, I hope, looking it up right now. I can't believe I don't remember this guy's name. I remembered it in the interview. But he wrote the most biased, scathing opinion when he released David Perdue and dismissed that case. I just thought it was shameful. And so then the Georgia Supreme Court unanimously reversed his decision. But then the case came back to him to litigate. Well, he just basically flicked the judge off and dismissed the lawsuit again. It's now back on appeal, and that's what Garland, Favorito, and I are speaking about later in today's broadcast. We had a really good conversation. We recorded it just earlier this week. That was, thank you, producer Anthony. Robert McBurney. Judge McBurney just flicked off the Georgia Supreme Court after they told him he had made one wrong ruling. Now he's going to make another wrong ruling. I don't know what his deal is. It almost feels to me that it's a game to see if they can run out the clock. And that people will forget about it. But I'll tell you, somebody who's not forgetting about it is Christina Robb, who's been on our program a couple of times. And here's what she had to say about the Georgia elections this week.
All right, so you've spent so many years literally fighting for exactly this cause. In fact, at a state level, they charged you, and that you still have stuff going on with that, for literally fighting for election integrity. If they came back to you again today and gave you complete control, Christina Bobb, what is the first thing you would do? Is there something that we need to be doing, either we're not doing or not doing hard enough?
Yeah, I would pass the Save America Act. I would tell the Republicans who are elected to actually do the will of their constituents and pass laws that make our election more secure. I would give backbones to all of the Republican attorney generals who are in these states that have been too timid to prosecute. Brad Raffensperger in Georgia now is trying to, the Republican Secretary of State in Georgia now wants to move the counting into a secret room for fear of, election tampering. So now nobody can see what's going on in Georgia. The Republican Attorney General could do something about that. Chris Carr hasn't done squat for the state of Georgia and protecting Georgia's elections.
Well, Christina Bobb, I said Rob, Christina Bobb, she got it right. She gets it. And I loved how she called out Raffensperger and do nothing Chris Carr, who I ran against for Attorney General. I don't stay on his case because I lost to him. I stay on his case because I think he's a sorry excuse for a public official who obviously is playing politics, and he doesn't stick his neck out. He's obliterated the Open Records Act laws in Georgia, just completely failed in his job as Attorney General. So he's gone now too. He lost. He only got 3 or 4% in his race for governor. He's history, and good riddance. All right, so you know that we did an episode on Cuba last week, and it got a lot of attention. We're going to stay on Cuba. We're going to talk to David and Umberto Casio later in the broadcast about Cuba. Umberto was born in Cuba. He's the same age as I am, and he lived there until he was 6 years old, and then he fled the country because the Cuban government was after his dad, who was a naval officer, and they were trying to accuse him of treason. But it wasn't the official government, it was the Castro government that came in and overtook the government. And so the Cancio family left Cuba and came to the United States. So we're going to talk about Cuba and Trump's plans there. Trump says it's not going to be hard. Here's what the president had to say about Cuba.
With the indictment of Castro, so they've a lot of people have suffered very big, very at levels that few people would understand. And I think the Cuban population of Miami, and certainly beyond Miami, people that came there that were decimated, whose families were ruined, appreciate what the Attorney General just did. We have a lot of people there. We had the CIA there.
What's coming next for Cuba?
It's a failing nation. You see that. It's falling apart. They have no oil. They have no money. It's a failing nation, so I just can't tell you that. But we're there to help.
Should we expect any escalation here, or should they expect anything? Yes.
No. No, you won't. There won't be escalation. I don't think there needs to be.
Well, you also know that the president, or that the department, U.S. Department of Justice, has rendered an indictment against Raul Castro for the murder of 4 Americans when they were on a humanitarian mission in the waters between Cuba and the United States. So they're going to prosecute him for murder. I think the question is whether he's going to now go peacefully or whether he's going to make us do what we did to Maduro. I have no doubt that we will go into Cuba and snatch him up and take him to bring him back to the United States for a trial for murder. He's probably in negotiations right now with the CIA on where he would like to live. Supposedly, he is believed to have a house in Russia. Maybe he will just go quietly in the night and go live the rest of his years in Russia and open the door for a regime change in Cuba. I think it's 60 years overdue, and it does appear to be in the works. If you listen to President Trump, he said that he didn't think it was going to be hard to effectuate. Well, today's broadcast and our studio is brought to you by Bone Frog Coffee. And our listeners know that Bone Frog is our studio sponsor. And we're honored to have them as our studio sponsor. If you grind through the day like I do and need that perfect kick without the jitters, grab Bone Frog Coffee. It's veteran-owned, founded by retired Navy SEAL Tim Cruikshank as a tribute to his fallen teammates in the Naval Special Warfare community. Each bag tells a story and gives a peek behind the curtain of special operations. If you don't know it already, the Bone Frog is a special sacred symbol of the Navy SEAL teams that represent those who gave their lives in combat, and is a reminder of the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms and the American way of life. Every bag, premium, small batch, roasted from top shelf Arabica beans, smooth, low acid, no Robusta junk. Think bold blends like Frogman Dark Roast or the classic Bone Frog Medium. Tastes like freedom in a cup. And here's the real deal. A chunk of every sale goes straight to helping SEAL vets and Gold Star families. They're aiming to raise $500,000 for Gold Star families and SEAL team vets. Coffee with a cause, you bet. That's not a slogan, it's brotherhood brewed daily. Head to bonefrog.com, snag some K-Cups, whole bean, or merchandise. Use the promo code TRUTH to get your discount. Start your day like I do. Fuel up, stay sharp, and remember, service before self. Support our veterans, and thank Bone Frog for sponsoring our studio. All right, next up we've got, who have we got first, Producer Anthony? We got the Cancios or? We've got Garland Favorito is our first interview. So today's broadcast is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. They are an energy company in Atlanta, Georgia, servicing restaurants. They collect their waste vegetable oil, bring it back to their plant where they refine it for biodiesel. They also service grease traps and vent hoods and provide sanitation for the front of the house and the back of the house. If you're in Atlanta and you're a restaurant owner or manager and you're tired of poor, late, dirty, inconsistent service, check out PCRenergy.com on the World Wide Web. They won't let you down. They've got a full live attendant during business hours and into the night. They'll answer your call, no automated attendance. And if you have an emergency call, they will come out and service you. That's Perfect Circle Renewable Energy, found at www.pcrenergy.com. All right, let's get to our first interview and help celebrate this wonderful Memorial Day weekend later today at 3 o'clock with a moment of silence, and help work to keep our vote honest and fair, and our elections fair. That's what Garland and I are talking about right now. Garland Favorito is Mr. Election Integrity in Georgia, maybe even in the United States. He's been pursuing elections integrity since 2006 when he co-founded Georgia Voter, or Voter GA. And he's also my friend. Garland, welcome back to The Truth.
Great to be back with you, John. It's been a while.
I don't know whether you drink or not, do you?
I think Ravensburger has led me to drinking over the last few years, but no, not much.
Well, I'm just wondering if you're hungover from celebrating the demise of Brad Raffensperger.
Well, it wasn't just Brad Raffensperger, but also going along with him was
Gabriel Sterling.
Gabriel Sterling and Attorney General Chris Carr.
I was getting around to that one.
The trifecta of election corruption here in Georgia. So I think the future looks pretty bright for us right now, but there's still an uphill battle.
Well, I think you get to take a lot of the credit for having been in the trenches for a long time. You were doing election integrity before most people even considered the concept. I mean, I always had suspicions about Georgia's elections, but never any hard proof until the 2020 election. And then I actually started looking, and I was both shocked and hugely disappointed with what I found, as you're well aware. So what's next for Raffensperger? Is he finished politically, as I hope that he is?
I would certainly think so. David Becker will probably find something for him to do, but I don't think he has a political future. He's one of the
Now, who is David Becker when you say David Becker will find?
Well,
something?
David Becker is the Soros-funded, he was the head of, well, he's now the head of CEIR, Center for Election Innovation Research, also was the head of ERIC, Electronic Registration Information Center. That's the organization to which Raffensperger has outsourced all the personal identifying information of all the voters and drivers in Georgia, and without our knowledge and without really any legal authority to do so.
What do you, I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's just speculation. I realize that unless you have some direct evidence. But what do you think is really driving Raffensperger? I mean, he seems like the chief creep to me. He was on the phone with President Trump in 2020. President Trump said, you know, the margin is so narrow, all you really have to do is find 11,778 votes. And he and the media completely flipped that and said that Trump had asked him to rig the election. What a complete and utter farce. The person who fixed the election is accusing someone else of trying to fix the election. It just, you know, I mean, I'm just wired to have a real negative reaction when people lie. And I've considered Raffensperger to be a untrustworthy person.
Well, we have a study where we pointed out 42 different discrepancies or false information that he gave the members of Congress and the General Assembly in that 10-page letter he wrote back on January 6th of 2021. 42 different points that we refuted, which were in a letter. That's an average of 4.2 points per page of deceptiveness. So, yeah, it's really, it's inexplicable. They say that the things that drive most politicians are power and money. So I would start with those two things and see where they go.
So you've got Tim Fleming and Vernon Jones, as I understand it, in a runoff for the Secretary of State. Is that right?
Right.
I should, but I don't know Tim Fleming. I don't know where, is he a state senator?
Tim is a state representative. He chaired the House Election Study Committee that operated mostly during the summer of this year after the session was over. He is from Covington, Georgia.
Well, studying the election this summer, that sounds a little too late to me. I mean, this has been raging since 2020. We've been wallowing in this mess for 6 years.
Yeah. Well, the Speaker of the House set up that committee after the session was over There wasn't enough that got done, so they set up the committee. The committee made a recommendation that we supported, but ultimately nothing was passed in this last session, even though we have had really good years in getting election integrity things passed in 21 and 24, but this year was pretty dry.
Well, so do you have a favorite between Fleming and Vernon Jones?
Well, we're a nonpartisan organization, so we can't take sides in elections.
Well, you're talking to your old buddy here. You can just tell me what your personal leanings are.
I'm on. We're on a live show, so we can't really. I can't.
Well, what would you say are the defining criteria that you would identify for the next Secretary of State of Georgia? I mean, I travel a fair bit, virtually everywhere I go, and someone will ask me where are you from, and I'll say I raised my family and did my career in Atlanta, and invariably the response is, "Oh, Georgia's a mess."
Yeah.
Is it possible to get the ship righted?
I think, John, to be honest with you, it's going to have to come from the top. And both Vernon and Tim have been somewhat helpful to us in the election integrity space. But I think that this is going to have to come from the top, and it is going to have to come from the new governor who takes over in January. That's where we're going to be able to solve this problem, depending upon who's elected.
So that new governor is going to be Burt Jones, Rick Jackson, or Keisha Lance Bottoms. Now, I happen to know two of the three, and I like Keisha Lance Bottoms personally, but I would not vote for her for dog catcher because she was very instrumental in the failed Biden administration. She worked in the executive branch and bills herself as one of the president's chief advisors. Well, I would be whiting that out on my resume, not putting it in neon lights. So, any insight on the Republican candidates for governor?
Well, John, I can tell you that everything that has gotten passed, and we actually have a pretty good track record, even though we came up dry in the last session, Georgia is number one in terms of election integrity improvement since 2020, hands down. And a lot of that, all the bills were initiated from the Senate. And the Senate has been under the leadership of Burt Jones for the last several years. And so we have gotten done. He has a good track record of getting stuff done for us. And we are going to release an election integrity scorecard on Tuesday that will outline some of the things that we have gotten passed, because a lot of people have forgotten all the things that have been passed by this General Assembly. Things like banning of outdoor drop boxes, banning of private money, making ballots and ballot images public record. All those types of things have been achieved. And there's quite a list. There's actually 30 different accomplishments that they have made. So it's quite amazing.
So do you feel, is it your sense that we had a fair and honest election last week in Georgia?
Well, it looked to me to be pretty clean, despite the fact that the election was still run out of the secret bunker, at least the aggregation of the results. There's a lawsuit right now to prevent that. But I would say that everything looked pretty good. However, we had massive problems with the no-ink poll books, particularly in Cobb County. And they are all sorts of problems. not pulling up the voter, not pulling up the correct ballot, not thinking properly. And we're still looking into all those problems to try to figure out what on earth happened.
Well, it almost feels to me that the people that we talked about earlier, Raffensperger, Sterling, and Carr, basically just said to us that we're going to cheat and there's nothing you can do about it. That's the way it came over. That's my interpretation. That's the way they came across to me. I mean, saying that you're going to aggregate the votes in a secret bunker that even the state elections board could not observe just seems to be as arrogant as it is illegal. I mean, what do you make of that?
Well, it's unbelievable, John, because it's also direct violation of Georgia law. OCGA 212406 says that all election officials must perform all of their duties in public. So it's just a complete disregard for the law by Raffensperger, and Chris Carr is allowing him to get away with it. So it's just unbelievable.
Well, so people came forward, filed an action in Fulton Superior Court, I believe. Is that right? To asking for an injunction to.
That's right. And you have to file in the court in Fulton County if you're going to, sue the government and sue Raffensperger.
Okay, we back?
Yeah, that was our internet.
All right. So the judge in that case, who was the judge or is the judge?
Well, the judge was supposed to be Melanie Lethbridge, but she was not available, although she was supposed to be for an election day. So the Chief Judge Glanville made the decision to grant the TRO, and then turned around about a few hours later and rescinded the decision. The temporary order would have allowed observers in that bunker area where the results are aggregated, verified, and reported by Raffensperger.
So who got to him?
The fingerprints seem to be the governor. I don't know. Unfortunately, this whole thing is supported by Chris Carr, who's the Attorney General. He's not standing up to enforce the law either. Did the Attorney General's office appear on behalf of the Secretary of State? Well, Mr. Anulowitz appeared, and I believe he had been retained by the Attorney General. I have to check to make sure, because the Attorney General is responsible for defending the Secretary of State, as you know. So, I am not convinced that is correct. Article 2 of the Georgia Constitution says that all officers of the state are to serve the people. Nowhere can I find that the Attorney General is beholden to the state officers. And in fact, I had that conversation with the former Georgia Attorney General, Mike, who am I trying to remember, Garland? Michael Bowers. Mike Bowers. I had that conversation with him a number of years ago, and he validated and actually informed me of what I'm just saying. And in fact, when he was Attorney General, he sued the governor on behalf of the state twice. So saying that the Attorney General has to represent the state officers is just not true. Yet that is the refrain that we're fed. But what if what happens when the officer commits a
blatant crime or a violation of his duty, are we to believe that the Attorney General is going to defend him? I don't think so.
Well, in addition, to add to your point, John, the Georgia law requires the Attorney General to uphold the laws, and it gives it very explicit power to do that. So that kind of adds to your point. It's not only a constitutional thing, but it's also a legal thing, which Chris Carr just refuses to do.
Well, it's very alarming to me that the conduct of the people that we elect who take an oath to protect the citizens of the state based on the Constitution and the laws seem to do just the opposite. And I agree with your sense that the election was fair. I did not see any anomalies just jumping off the page other than aggregating the votes in the bunker. I really did stop and consciously think the fix is in. We're going to end up with results that no one expected, that don't comport with logic. But as it turned out, I'm not seeing that. In fact, I'm seeing basically just the opposite of that. People that I thought would be if they were going to steal an election, that they would rig it somehow. But I personally, and I'm not there like you are looking at it minute by minute, but my general impressions were that it seemed like a fair election to me.
Yeah, I think there were one or two surprises, but nothing that would generate a massive amount of suspicion. We just had these serious issues with the poll books. We've got to figure out what happened there.
Well, it just seems like the mess does continue, though. The State Elections Board has tried to assert itself and try and make a difference in Georgia elections, but they seem to be thrown roadblocks in their way. As we said, most recently being denied access to oversee the aggregation of the votes. What would motivate the Secretary of State to pick that kind of a fight? I mean, no one would have criticized him if he had allowed the Elections Board access to viewing the aggregation, or the press, or members of the Republican and Democratic parties. I don't think there's a soul on earth that would have been critical of him for if he were to have done that, which I believe that he was required to do under state law. I mean, I don't think it's just limited to the State Elections Board. I think there should have been representatives from the media and both parties present.
Right, and there's limited space, I would imagine, in the Emergency Operations Center. And that.
Well, how convenient! Why not do it in Brad Raffensperger's closet in the confines of his home then? And then there wouldn't be space for anybody except him and Gabriel Sterling.
Right, but to your point, at a minimum, the Democratic and Republican representatives should have been available. We tried to get some credentialed poll watchers in there, and you could even put a camera in there
yes.
and televise what's going on, or you could just simply move it out of the bunker. There is no reason for aggregation and statewide reporting to be done in a secret bunker. 159 counties all aggregate their results from precincts, and not one of them that I know of uses a secret bunker to do that.
Are there any openings on the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals right now?
I think they were all filled in the election.
Well, I just wonder if somebody's going to retire before the end of Kemp's term, and we'll find Judge Granville being the new nominee or the new governor's appointment. That seems to have been the pattern in the past, like with the head of the GBI, who refused to look into the 2020 election because he was going to be a team player, ends up with an appointment for life as a Superior Court judge in Cobb County.
Yeah.
How convenient.
Well, and you will remember well that since you were involved at the time, the case where the appeals court upheld the lower court ruling that we had no standing in the Fulton County counterfeit ballot case. Once that ruling was made, the justice who we think actually wrote the decision, Justice Pinson, was promoted to the Georgia Supreme Court immediately after that, within 30 days after making that decision against us.
And he was appointed to the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court?
He was in the Court of Appeals and now sits on the Georgia Supreme Court.
I see. He wrote the decision while on the Court of Appeals. Yeah. Well, I thought that the Supreme Court reversed that Court of Appeals decision unanimously. Have I got that wrong? Was it not unanimous?
They did. You were absolutely right. But he had to recuse himself because he had written
the decision. That makes sense, of course.
Yes, or at least he was involved in the decision. If he didn't write it, he was involved in the decision, and therefore he had to recuse. And you're right, it was unanimous. And as you know, we didn't even have a hearing. I was kind of looking forward to going to the Georgia Supreme Court for a hearing because I thought we were going to win that. But we didn't even get to go have a hearing. They said it was such a no-brainer.
Yes,
they made it unanimously without a hearing.
Well, and that is within the Supreme Court's purview to deny oral arguments when they consider that there would be nothing to be gained by having oral arguments. So, I mean, I'm just thankful that the Supreme Court is there and can provide some checks and balances. They seem like the venue that you can get a fair decision out of. Certainly not the Court of Appeals and the Fulton County Courthouse. My God, what a snake pit.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm sorry, Garland, you're such a nice guy and everybody likes you. I don't really mince words, and that's no criticism of you. I probably would maybe have been a better politician if I would be more diplomatic. I just call them as I see them. And Judge McBurney, who had your case in his courtroom, wrote the most biased opinion I've ever read since I joined the bar in 1979 against David Perdue, and said that he is not going to take advantage of this court, and that was the decision that the Supreme Court reversed. But then when the case came back, Judge Amaro recused himself. I still don't know what that was about. Why would the judge recuse himself from a case that he had made rulings in, and he had had for 9 months? But then it went back to McBurney, who obviously was hugely biased.
Well, technically, he just transferred the case to McBurney. He didn't actually recuse himself. He shouldn't have. If he wanted to get rid of the case, if he didn't want to keep it, then he should have sent it back to the original judge, Judge Rachel Consale, or to the chief judge. We now know that Judge McBurney contacted Judge Amaro ahead of time before he got the case back and arranged to receive the case, which is unbelievable that he would do that. As you know, we filed a motion to recuse McBurney immediately because of the David Perdue ruling that you mentioned. And also he did this bizarre release of grand jury excerpts from the Fani Willis investigation, which poisoned the well, or apparently was trying to poison the well of public opinion, not only in Georgia, but throughout the country.
Yes.
So a clear extreme bias, and ironically, it was Judge Melanie Lethbridge who said that he could stay on the case, that it wasn't our motion to recuse wasn't adequate.
Well, I'm speechless. I am just really speechless that these judges are not following the laws and are not following, it doesn't appear to me, the rules of ethics. I mean, what right does Judge McBurney in Fulton County have to call up a judge in Henry County who got the case because all of the Fulton County judges did originally recuse themselves. So why was it okay for them to recuse themselves in Fulton because of a perceived conflict of interest vis-a-vis the elections board? They all show up in the same building for work every day, or they get their paycheck from the same place. But then it's okay for McBurney to take the case 3 years later. That doesn't track.
Yeah, it was originally perceived by the chief judge as an election case, and he sent it over to Judge Amaro in Henry County, and we didn't dispute that, even though it wasn't an election case. It was an equal protection due process case, but we felt good about being in Judge Amaro's courtroom, and as you know, he was ruled in our favor multiple times before he suddenly decided that we had no standing after Fulton County hired criminal defense attorneys just to prevent us from looking at the ballots.
So the FBI has the ballots. What do you think is going to happen?
I think there's going to be indictments.
Do you think that they preserved the ballots and that what the FBI picked up were actually the ballots from 2020 in entirety?
I do believe that they were preserved. I think they have them in their entirety, but they don't have enough to match the results that they reported. And therein lies the catch, and that's why they have been fighting this so hard for so many years.
So who do you think is going to go down? Who are your prime suspects?
I couldn't speculate about anything like that. But the only thing I could say is that, the cover-up was maybe even worse than the crime.
Yeah, for sure.
This has been an unbelievable and massive cover-up just to prevent the truth from being known to the Georgia voters and really all the rest of America.
Well, for me, this constitutes a breach of a red line. I mean, my forefathers, yours, and our listeners, many of them paid the ultimate price to establish this country in 1776, which we're about to celebrate in another month. People gave their lives, they fought, they left their families, their homes, so that we could establish a free country with freedoms like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to own a gun, and perhaps most importantly, the freedom to choose our elected officials. And the people that did this in 2020, and God knows when else, overtly deprived us of our franchise. And my belief is if you take our franchise, you take our country. And that should not be lightly considered or allowed to occur without serious repercussions. Ergo, I want some damn accountability. Now, where is the Favorito case that was now most recently in McBurney's court?
They are both in the Court of Appeals. Our case, as well as Caroline Jeffords' case, are sitting in the Court of Appeals right now. We have filed our appeal. I think we're waiting on Fulton County's reply.
Well, so what was the appeal on the basis of? I'm just haven't been aware of any rulings from. Was it in McBurney's court that a decision from him that is being appealed?
McBurney sat on the case for a year after getting it. And then a week after the FBI executed its search warrant, he suddenly decided that our case was not valid and that we should pay attorney's fees to Fulton County. And this is where it gets really funny. First of all, he says that we didn't plead future claims. We actually pled 30 times future claims in our briefs, and 15 in the most active one. Caroline also had probably another, she even had more. I mean, she might have had as many as 60 or so. So that was completely false. It was completely conflicting with the actual documents that are in his court. And that was one major area where it was false. He claimed that we had no justicable issue. And that's crazy as well, because again, as you know, or you were involved in this, we had 7 favorable rulings from the courts, 5 from Judge Amero, plus a victory in the Georgia Supreme Court and a victory remand back from the Court of Appeals to him. 7 different issues decided in our favor. And he claimed that therefore there was no justicable issue. That's kind of crazy. And there was that. And then he said, well, we'd have to pay attorney's fees. Why would you pay attorney's fees if you won the case in the Georgia Supreme Court? It's crazy, but we can go through it a little bit more detail. But the bottom line is, if you read our brief, we found 7, I think it was 6 or 7 different unprecedented rulings, as far as we know, in the history of the Georgia judicial system, to try to claim that we would have fees. So, or should be obligated to pay fees. It's just, it was absurd. But I feel sure that we'll get that overturned. But then we have to also win this on appeal.
Well, so you're going to get it overturned from what venue? By the Court of Appeals?
I think that the Court of Appeals will overturn McBurney.
Yeah,
he gets overturned quite often.
So you kind of wonder if McBurney has got Judge Boasberg on speed dial. This is the sort of arrogance that these activist judges appear to engage in. I mean, I'm wondering if McBurney is being looked at by the FBI. I mean, who is he talking to? How is he coming up with this nonsense? Where does he get the arrogance to go against the Georgia Supreme Court and, as you say, completely ignore a fellow Superior Court judge's rulings, which would call into question McBurney's rulings in the case?
Well, he ignored dozens of precedents that have been established over decades in trying to claim that we should pay attorney's fees. There's just so many things wrong with that, and we cite one after the other. It goes on and on. I mean, nobody.
That feels like threat and intimidation to me, because the standard in Georgia, I believe, is stubborn litigiousness. And you cannot be stubbornly litigious, as you point out, when you've already received favorable rulings from another Superior Court judge, which were basically affirmed by the Supreme Court of the state. And so it does feel like bullying to me, for lack of a better word. And I just don't understand where this judge thinks, where he gets off. How does he not care that he is going to be held in contempt, not legally, but in the court of public opinion by the public for his absurd rulings, which seem to be, to me, undermining our system of government?
I would have to agree with you there, John. I think it does undermine our system of government, rulings that had no basis in facts of the case.
Well, I hope the FBI will look closely at him and maybe McAfee too. I mean, McAfee made favorable rulings for his former boss, Fonnie Willis, when she was in his courtroom. And I've always felt that something happened with Amero. You know, I've traveled down to Henry County on more than one occasion and sat in the courtroom and observed him. I also got firsthand accounts from people that were involved in the case that Amaro seemed to be very concerned about what he had learned, that he actually came to the English Avenue warehouse, English Street warehouse, where he personally observed the absentee ballots and the evidence from the 2020 election, ordered that they be preserved, and also ordered that a Fulton County sheriff stand guard outside the warehouse for a large number of weeks and months to make sure that nothing happened to those ballots. And then one day, was it in August or September of that year, I think, that we went to his courtroom, and it looked like we were watching an outer body experience, because he completely changed his demeanor. His whole personality seemed to be different. He seemed to be hostile towards your lawyer, and it was just bizarro. I called up Bob Shealy afterwards. Bob was in federal court in Augusta, and the judge in that case would not allow him to have a leave of absence for a day so that he could go and appear before Amaro. And I told him, I said, Bob, something's going on. I said, this guy has completely changed his colors, and I'm worried about this case. And Bob, being the kind of easygoing, all shucks guy he is, said, oh, we'll get it straightened out. And damned if 10 days later, Amaro out of left field throws the case out of court on the basis of standing, which had been argued 9 months before, as would happen in any case.
Right.
Venue and standing are the first two things that are resolved. In fairness to Amaro, I don't believe he ever explicitly ruled on standing, but he permitted the case to go forward, which was certainly an implicit ruling that the petitioners had standing. So it just all felt very uncomfortable to me, and that's an understatement to characterize it that way. It seemed rigged. The election we know was rigged, and there appeared to be a cover-up. There's the word I'm looking for. There appeared to be a coordinated cover-up, and I want the FBI to investigate it and not stop at anybody. Go all the way up the chain. Who did they talk to? Who did they email? Who did they text with? Get their phones, get their signal chats, whatever. Let's bust this thing wide open and find out the truth so we can have a free, fair country governed by the rule of law and the Constitution, which we will celebrate in another month.
Yeah, in fact, I was up there celebrating the rededication of America this past weekend.
Good for you.
But the standing, is just it's a joke. It is a vehicle that judges use to dismiss cases that are too much hot potatoes they don't want to touch.
I don't think it's a hot potato, Garland. It's our country.
Right.
That so marginalizes the issue to say, oh, it's a hot potato and the judge doesn't have a pair. Well, it's more than that, because the judge was traveling down the track to do the right thing and then just completely reversed himself. Yeah. And McBurney is showing all different colors. He seems like, he's, was Burt Jones in his courtroom with Fonnie Willis? Or did McAfee have that?
No, I don't believe he was in the courtroom, no.
I don't know whose court Burt was in when he pointed out Fonnie Willis's conflict of interest, because she had donated money to Burt's opponent, and then she was trying to interfere with his election for lieutenant governor. Yeah. And whoever that judge was correctly ruled and said, no, you can't give money to his opponent and then try and derail his campaign for lieutenant governor. So
I think that was McBurney, actually.
I think it was McBurney. I do. So, and then when then he had harsh words for Fonnie Willis within the last several months. I can't remember exactly what the issue was that he was ruling on, but I felt like, well, maybe the judge is coming around. But then this case, this what you're saying, it just blows my mind. It's like he's flicking off the Georgia Supreme Court and the rule of law and precedent, and it's bewildering to me. I think it's bad enough that it needs to be looked at. That's what I'm saying.
His harsh words were, I think, he called out the conflict of interest that she had with Burt Jones, because she had held a fundraiser for Charlie Bailey, who was running for lieutenant governor against her.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
And
but I'm saying in the last couple of months, or maybe in 2026, I read that McBurney had issued some sort of a rebuke on Fani Willis, and I don't remember what the subject was.
Well, I think that's what it was. I think that was the lieutenant governor's, her attempting to prosecute the lieutenant governor, along with the 18 other political adversaries she already indicted, which, by the way, after she went to the Fulton County Commission in November and asked for $5 million a year to reduce the murder case backlog in Fulton County, then she turned around and used that money to start the investigations that resulted in the indictment of 18 of her political adversaries. And then, as you know, after she was booted off the case for conflict, and Nathan Wade as well, her boyfriend, then the prosecuting attorney's counsel comes in and decides that there was not one of those 41 counts that she had were actually prosecutable. So this is the greatest prosecutorial misconduct case, I believe, in American history.
Horrendous. And you know, it's clear that she and Nathan Wade were coordinating with the Biden White House. And the question I continue to ask is, why is she still a sitting district attorney? Where is the Georgia Bar? Where is the Judicial Qualifications Committee? Where is the governor? I mean, come on. What?
She should have been impeached. Where's the legislature?
100%. 100%. Well, I'm glad you went to Washington last week. I would imagine that was a really inspirational experience. In just a couple of minutes, let's recap that. Tell us about you and Tamara. I'm sure it was by your side.
Yeah, if she was here, she could do a better job of this than me. But it was truly amazing. They had a lot of worship bands. Hillsong did a complete medley. Chris Tomlin closed us out. There was a Liberty praise and worship band. Then they had all these amazing speakers. I wish I can't remember them all. Eric Metaxas, Lou Ingalls, Franklin Graham, Jack Graham, Sissy Graham. There was the Bishop Barron, Robert Barron, I believe, was there, and then it was kind of highlighted by a prayer where we literally got down on our knees and rededicated America to God, and then Speaker Mike Johnson closed us out with a prayer of rededication. And along the way, we got videos from President Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, and J.D. Vance all along the way. It was quite an amazing.
So where was the convention held?
It was on the mall. It was outdoors on the mall. And
how many people?
Hundreds of thousands, and they had grossly underestimated how many people would come on that such a short notice to rededicate America. And they had probably needed 2 or 3 times the amount of space they had allocated for that event. But it's quite an amazing event. I was blessed because we ended up on the 4th row thanks to Tamara's connections.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I'm glad you were able to have that experience. And I do firmly believe that that's the only hope that we've got to save this country. We were founded on Judeo-Christian values, and every member of that signed the Declaration of Independence believed in God, and that was, even though that we explicitly have a notion of separation of church and state, church underlies our core beliefs. And I think to get this country back on the right track, that's what needs to happen. And it sounds like you and Tamara were part of an effort to start that ball rolling. And I hope that it collects speed and momentum, and that and the good news is that millennials are returning to church in record numbers. So I think there is hope. I think there are reasons for optimism. And thanks to people like you and Tamara, Garland, we're all in your debt for the 20 years that you have spent on helping ensure free, fair elections. That is not trivial. That is, and you haven't done it on the weekends. You've done it. You've been all in, and you've spent no telling how many tens of thousands of hours. And so, thank you for your good work. Keep fighting, and please come back soon and often, and keep us posted on how you're doing.
Thank you, John. And we are an all-volunteer organization. As you know, Tamara and I are retired. She's semi-retired. And we do this full-time. We've been doing it full-time for the last 7 years.
So where can people follow you? How can they keep up with you?
VoterGA.org. We have got all the legal documents out there, press conferences to look at, and all sorts of things, press releases about the things we discussed today. They're all on the VoterGA.org tab. And if you can see to make a donation, that is also tax deductible. We are 501c3. So, John, but thank you so much. We can't do what we do without people like you who are willing to, get the news out and spread it so that the people learn the truth, because the truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, and this is really strange, and I never thought we'd see it in this country, but evidently it's been ongoing for longer than we realized, and I hope it's going to get stopped in its tracks, and most importantly, that the people that have done it are held accountable. That's what I want. I think that's what our listeners want. I think we're approaching the point where people of America are going to demand it. And I've just got the sense that between now and the midterm elections, that a lot of revelations are going to be coming out. And personally, I can't wait.
I think you're absolutely right.
Well, that is the truth. And I'm John Gordon. Thank you, Garland Favorito. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you, John.
Today's broadcast in our studio is brought to you by Bone Frog Coffee. And our listeners know that Bone Frog is our studio sponsor. And we're honored to have them as our studio sponsor. If you grind through the day like I do and need that perfect kick without the jitters, grab Bone Frog Coffee. It's veteran-owned, founded by retired Navy SEAL Tim Cruikshank as a tribute to his fallen teammates in the Naval Special Warfare community. Each bag tells a story and gives a peek behind the curtain of special operations. If you don't know it already, the Bone Frog is a special sacred symbol of the Navy SEAL teams that represent those who gave their lives in combat, and is a reminder of the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms and the American way of life. Every bag, premium, small batch, roasted from top shelf Arabica beans, smooth, low acid, no Robusta junk. Think bold blends like Frogman Dark Roast or the classic Bone Frog Medium. Tastes like freedom in a cup. And here's the real deal. A chunk of every sale goes straight to helping SEAL vets and Gold Star families. They're aiming to raise $500,000 for Gold Star families and SEAL team vets. Coffee with a cause, you bet. That's not a slogan, it's brotherhood brewed daily. Head to bonefrog.com, snag some K-Cups whole bean or merchandise. Use the promo code TRUTH to get your discount. Start your day like I do. Fuel up, stay sharp, and remember, service before self. Support our veterans, and thank Bone Frog for sponsoring our studio. It's my pleasure to welcome back to The Truth David and Umberto Cancio. They have become friends of mine since they came on The Truth a few months ago with their new book, Gabriel Locke, bringing Umberto's practice of law to real life. And they have actually authored 2 books now. David, Umberto, welcome back to The Truth.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me.
How are the books doing?
They're doing really well. From a commercial standpoint, we're not millionaires yet. We're not quite at Stephen King's level or anything, but from a critical standpoint, they're doing exceptionally well. Book 1 was received, with all these glowing reviews, and actually book 2 has been received even better than that. So the good news is we're on the upward trend.
I'm very happy for you and very proud of you. Now, I want to talk about Cuba this morning because Umberto was born in Cuba in 1953. I wonder how I remember that one. And then he came to the United States in 1959, where he subsequently went to Duke undergraduate and then University of Florida Law School, and then enjoyed a successful practice of law in Miami. And he's raised a very nice son, too. David, he has become a co-author with his dad, which I think is pretty cool. And he went to NC State and majored in Spanish. Also speaks English and French fluently. My gosh, I'm still trying to master English. He's got an interest in soccer, traveling, and music and reading. And it's just a pleasure to have you all both back on The Truth. So, Umberto, what do you remember your formative years from 1953 to 1959? I had a similar experience, except my country of origin was Ohio. So, but almost the identical pattern. You moved to Miami when I moved from Ohio to Atlanta. And I remember those first 6 years so vividly.
Yeah, I have some memories. My father was a career naval officer under 3 different presidents in Cuba. And one of the first things that happened when Castro took over on January 1st of 1959 was that my father was arrested and subsequently tried for treason. That was customary by the communist government, who had not announced they were communist at that point. But my father managed to get a not guilty plea, and that was, a not guilty result. And that was primarily because my dad had been out of the country, so they couldn't make up the crime that they wanted to. They found the man, but they couldn't find the crime. So he had to escape from Cuba. It was very dramatic. And we managed to follow him by plane in September of '59.
I'll be darned. Well, that must have been a very stressful time for a 5-year-old. So
Yeah.
you followed your dad to Miami. Is that where you came?
Yep. We came to Miami. My dad was involved in anti-Castro activities for a year or two continuously. And then it was time to feed the family. So he began to work and eventually ended up working for a multinational corporation out of Cleveland, Ohio. Parker.
I'm sorry?
The multinational was out of Cleveland, Ohio. You may know it, Parker Hannifin. So he worked for Parker Hannifin for quite a few years.
I'll be darned. Cleveland used to have a bunch of Fortune 500 companies located there. It was quite an industrial capital. So what do you remember about Cuba when you were there as a young boy?
Well, I have a few memories of my grandparents' house, my other grandparents' house, and I have one particular memory, which was they put my father in a jail in a old Spanish castle that sits right on the bay, on Havana Bay. And I remember as a 5-year-old climbing the stairs to go to his cell to visit him. And I remember that the stairs, were far too large for a 5-year-old. And I also remember my mother being 9 months pregnant, climbing the stairs behind me. That's one very vivid memory. And the other one was at the beginning of January when the revolutionaries came in and how they were walking with guns in their hands and rosaries around their neck. And those rosaries turned out to be a lie. And those are two very vivid memories I have.
So much of communism turns out to be a lie, I believe. But what about the standard of living in Cuba at that time? Was it a nice place to live?
It was a wonderful place to live. Actually, without exaggeration, Cuba was an up-and-coming country. They had diversified away from the sugar, using the sugarcane tree to do various number of things. They had begun producing candy. They were producing paper from the cane itself once the sugar was extracted. Very good quality paper. There were nickel mines in Cuba. There were tourism was developing very quickly. As a matter of fact, in 1958, there was the government had money left over, $748 million. So Cuba was well on its way in partnership with the United States, who was obviously our greatest trading partner. People could eat meat, they could eat chicken, they could eat eggs. Everything was available.
Everything they don't have now.
Well, yeah.
Have you been back? Have you been back since you left?
And I will not go back until the regime is no longer in existence.
What about you, David? Have you ever visited Cuba?
No, I've never gone. Part of the difficulty about having a grandfather that was tried for treason is that anyone with the surname Cancio is at risk of being either thrown in jail or possibly shot on sight. So it's not something I want to risk just yet,
Yeah, I don't blame you. Good, smart boy. You done good, Humberto. Did you see the Nick Shirley videos from Cuba a couple of weeks ago?
No, I haven't had a chance to see those. I'm sorry. The ones that I've seen from him have primarily been Minnesota and a lot of fraud.
Well, Nick went to Cuba. He was planning on staying 3 days. And after he had been there a few hours, Cuba spies showed up on his doorstep and started following their every move. Yeah. And he really genuinely seemed to be in fear for his safety. He thought that he might be detained or worse, maybe locked up. Don't know. He doesn't know what the charges would have been, but a Cuban general came to the hotel where he was staying, and that's when he and his team decided that they better hightail it out of there. Yeah. And so they hatched an escape plan and left for the airport under cover of night, and then got there and were able to get out before they were detected. But he seemed genuinely apprehensive on these videos. But the main point is that the city, Havana, appeared to be in decay. I mean, you have all these old, beautiful buildings. The architecture, I'm told, in Cuba is really spectacular, but it's now crumbling because it's just fallen into disrepair, and not insignificantly because of the United States' activity there. There's a blockade on oil, and so nobody can drive. There's no fuel to motor the cars, and electrical blackouts is the norm. And Nick reported that doctors are operating with flashlights rather than electrical powered lights. And so it's really pretty spooky. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, before we get there, John, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Let me clarify a few things. Cuba has not had a lot of fuel many times in its recent history. As a matter of fact, in the 90s, the Havana buses were being drawn by oxen. And not gasoline.
No kidding.
No kidding. The food has always been scarce. As a matter of fact, in those days, which was when the Soviet Union pulled out, picadillo, which is ground beef.
It's a traditional dish. Ground beef with some spices.
Right. The government put out a recipe of how to make it with banana peels. because there was
Oh my gosh.
So this idea of the fact that the embargo has created this situation is not really correct. It's not really accurate, as a matter of fact.
Well, it certainly exacerbated it because, I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
there
No, of course. Yeah.
it's gone from a shortage of fuel to no fuel.
Exactly. Exactly. But where it really hits it is that the fuel, when it comes in, it's first for the military. So the effect that it's had is actually not so much with the people, but rather with the military. They don't have
I see.
fuel.
Right.
And that's key.
Well, and Castro was charged by the United States with murder earlier this week.
Yeah.
What's going on? I mean, he committed that murder some years ago.
Yeah.
Reportedly, he shot down 2 U.S. aircraft that were there on humanitarian missions and killed 4 people in the process.
Yeah. So if you look at why he's being indicted for this murder as opposed to anything else, right? This is something that at this point is what, 30 years old?
Yeah. Murder has no statute of limitation.
No statute of
But if you
limitations.
look at
Correct.
it, Cuba's been a narco trafficking hub, just like Venezuela has been. So actually, the Department of Justice in this case has pretty much done exactly the same thing they did with President Maduro of Venezuela, where they're trying to get him on really a charge that will stick. It's our belief that the reason why things have stalled a bit in terms of, I guess you could say the reason why things have stalled a bit in terms of the negotiations with Diaz-Canel and the Cuban regime is because the Castros are very reluctant to give up power. So we believe, and this is all just obviously our supposition, that by removing Raul Castro, which all they need is one witness to say that he gave the order to either shoot down the planes, which were 1 shot each, or just to shoot down any planes that came in that area. If they can get one witness to testify that, which the United States probably wouldn't have put up those charges unless they already had a few candidates in mind to be that witness. But with that in mind, then they can actually have the legitimacy of the charges to be able to extract him from Cuba.
Yeah, what you have to bear in mind, John, is that about a decade ago, the families of these men that died actually sued the Cuban government in federal court and won. It was more than $100 million in damages, and they were able to collect because of the frozen Cuban assets that the United States possesses, and they were able to attach those. So there has already been a case in court.
Don't let my wife hear that. She'll be encouraging me to take a sightseeing tour over Cuba.
Anyway,
I'm just saying.
They were able to attach that and get the money. So there's already been a case in court where they've proven that the Castro government was at fault for these people's death. Now, all they have to do is, as David said, is to link Raul personally to the murder. And so that may not be as difficult as one would think, even though a lot of years have gone by, because I am sure that there's somebody who was there at the time who is now in the United States. And it's probably here because they promised to exchange their knowledge for being able to stay in the country.
Yes.
Well, don't you reckon that's a predicate for going and doing an extraction? I mean, if I were Raul and I was 94 years old, I think I would say, can we talk?
Right.
I mean, Maduro, he was arrogant. He thought he could flick us off and get away with it. And in fairness, that had been the practice in the past. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was very little accountability with our enemies, and we just let them do what they would, and maybe we'd slap some sanctions on them, but there was no meaningful accountability. But Maduro, the rules were changed with Maduro. So don't you suppose that we're either going to see Raul arriving in the United States, greeting photographers either in a suit or in an orange suit, one or the other? I think it's up to him at this point which way it goes down.
Well, and that's exactly correct. I mean, the reality is I've been talking about this subject now for probably the last couple of months, right? We've been called on to different shows, et cetera, that have asked, how long do you think this will last? And I gave them 3 to 5 months max. If this doesn't happen before Christmas, I'll send everybody $20 in the mail.
Well,
and the reason why
You're going to send everybody $20 in the mail,
I've only talked
or just me?
Oh, I'll send you $20 in the mail for this. I'll just buy your lunch. We'll go to lunch again.
Okay, done.
But anyway,
deal.
The point being was that, when I thought about it, I'm like, what more of a precedent do you need? They just took out the leader of Venezuela. Everybody's scared. They went to Iran, and in a week we had knocked out 89 of their 250 guys.
3 layers of leadership.
So I'm sitting there thinking,
that's unprecedented, by the way. Yeah. And through all the wars I'm familiar with, I don't remember ever removing the leader of the country with whom we were at war.
No.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm looking at all this thinking, what on earth is holding them up? I mean, Diaz-Canel's brighter than this. By now, he could have gotten at least $50 million in a nice apartment, probably, I don't know, in Moscow or something like that. He'd live like a king for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Has to be another cog in the chain.
Well,
and this is it. And
according to rumors, the Castros have a $100 million house in Odessa, Russia, what used to be Russia. And maybe, Raul should think about taking a long vacation there and avoiding any other problems. The second thing we have is that I always wondered how Diaz-Canel came to have the position he has. And it turned out that he is the protege of Raul Castro. And so Raul...
That who is the protege of Raul?
The present
president
of Cuba.
Diaz-Canel.
Canel, yeah.
Well, I thought that was Raul. What was Raul's role?
Was the president.
Right.
When he steps down, he picks this man. And he picked,
I see.
He picked
I got
this man because he was his protege. So
I'm with you. Okay.
So he basically does what Raul tells him to do. And I think that is the problem, that they won't deal because Raul is still saying no.
Right.
Well, I think Raul is going to be saying no from a U.S. penitentiary pretty soon if he's not careful. And I mean, I zoom out 30,000 feet and I look at everything that's going on. It seems to me that President Trump is just cleaning up all the messes all over the world that have plagued us for the last 60 years. I mean, Iran has been a sponsor of terrorism for the last 50 years. They bombed the U.S. Embassy in Beirut. They attacked an Air Force base, killing our servicemen and women in Beirut. I mean, I've got 2 pages of fine print of all the horrible terrorist activities that they've either directly participated in or sponsored. And I think, to me, that you combine that with the fact that they killed 43,000 people this year of their own citizens in Iran. And you couple that with their attempt to develop a nuclear weapon. I mean, either one of those is provocation enough for me. So that's where I differ from Tucker and Megyn and whoever else, Alex Jones. I mean, I think that Trump has shown the courage and the leadership that no one has shown since the Iranians, the students took our embassy in 1978 and held 66 of our diplomats hostage for 445 days. That should have been dealt with by Reagan, in my opinion. And I guess the only reason that he didn't was maybe he felt indebted to the Iranians for him becoming president of the United States, because it definitely hurt Jimmy Carter dramatically that he wasn't able to resolve the hostage crisis. And the way that it went down, they released the hostages the day of Reagan's inauguration. It seemed like a pretty well orchestrated plan to me. And so I don't know what motivated Reagan. He should have gone in there and bombed the hell out of them, taken back our embassy and straightened the mess out then. But it lingered and it festered and nobody dealt with it. Not George Bush, not Bill Clinton, not Barack Hussein Obama, who actually ended up giving them money and removing the sanctions. What is the matter with that man? I don't think that he represented America's interests, frankly. I have no hesitancy of saying that very publicly. But then George W. Bush, he had a chance. He kind of maintained the status quo, it seemed like. So Trump comes to town and he's finally saying no more, enough. Good for him.
Well, I think that we've been the recipients of a chemical war for a long time. The pandemic was just one aspect of it. I can't figure why a drug dealer who's interested in keeping people hooked on drugs would actually go and kill his clientele. So obviously, there's more than a monetary motive involved in the situation. And so to me, at that point, it becomes a chemical warfare to kill our population and to destroy it, quite frankly. So these countries, Venezuela, Cuba, and Mexico, are the conduit through which the Chinese make those deadly drugs reach us. And so I think that Trump is going about eliminating
the allies,
allies of China in this matter. I got a rumor from a Venezuelan client of mine, and we were talking about the situation. He's living right now in Europe for a few months, and he said, everybody here in Europe considers Trump a terrible person and so forth. And we were talking, he said, what people don't realize is that the uranium that the Iranis have actually came from Venezuela. And this is a rumor now. The fact is that Maduro cut a deal with the Iranians. They would come and be able to dig the uranium and the gold out of Venezuela. And in exchange, they would keep all the uranium, half the gold, and Maduro would personally get the other half of the gold. And as a matter of fact, there's got to be some truth to it, because in one of the banks that the United States actually got to, they found a great deal of gold belonging to Maduro. So,
wow.
People should put that in their pipe and think about it, because I think that there was a connection there, a direct connection between these two countries. And he hit Venezuela first, and now he hit Iran, and now he's going to Cuba. So, yeah, and I think there are other people in the line waiting. Yeah, to be hit.
Well, it seems to me also that Trump is being pretty strategic in creating a iron wall around our country. If he is able to ultimately bring about effective regime change in Venezuela, maybe he already has, we'll see, and then Cuba next. I mean, that's a pretty dramatic barrier right there from foreign interference. And then we've got Mexico, who is our ally to the south, Canada to the north, Hawaii and Alaska to the west. And then we'll see what happens to Greenland. Whether I guess they've said we're not for sale. I don't know. I didn't know you could buy a country, but I don't think Trump's done trying yet. And we'll see. But strategically, that's really pretty smart, don't you think?
Yeah, not only that, but if you figure that he's managed to cut off the oil from China, that pretty much does it, because remember, they were getting oil out of Venezuela and Iran, and now they're both gone. So
I think she said, look, we won't buy Iranian oil anymore. And China, their economy is hurting right now as well. So it couldn't have come at a worse time for them. And I think what you said, Umberto, is absolutely spot on. I think Trump is brilliant in the way that he's going about engaging with China, and not confrontationally, but he's just hitting them where it hurts, and there's not much they can do about it, it seems, including getting back fair trade through the Panama Canal, which they've swept in and taken over the canal that we gave to Panama, that we built with human sacrifice and a lot of money.
Yep.
So I think it's brilliant what he's doing. No, and I just think that Americans should unite behind him instead of all the fractured bitterness that we see, principally from the whacked left.
Well, let me tell you, we were walking around Washington, and it's much better than what it was, just 4 years ago under a different president. I can tell you that it's a much nicer reflection of this country, but there's still some whack jobs walking around.
But a whole lot less.
A whole lot less of them.
Yeah.
It's funny when we talk about Latin America, we sometimes have ignored it, and it is really a fantastic change that is brought about by Trump's philosophy and Rubio's execution. This shield of the Americas is the feeling that, hey, we need to protect ourselves as a continent, or as two continents. And he has at the same time begun to push the Chinese out. The Chinese have been building facilities all over Latin America, and only for those countries to find out that the Chinese begin taking over little bit by bit. Peru has had that problem when the Chinese came in and built a harbor. And so we had to reverse that trend.
Yes.
And that's what we have also begun to do. And the first step was to cut off the flow of fentanyl and create that wall that you were talking about. And I think we're just seeing the first steps, and I think it will be continued. And I think that more and more we will get closer and closer to the countries in Latin America, quite frankly, because Europe has turned their back on us.
Do you have relatives still living in Cuba?
You don't.
I don't, but my wife does. So my son has relatives.
I do. Yeah. So I have quite a bit of an extended family on my mom's side. So my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, was one of 9. He was the only one that came to the United States.
Oh, wow. So are you in touch with him at all, David?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm in touch with him fairly often because my grandparents actually call them pretty much every day. I'm my grandparents' caretaker, so they live in my house, and so I get to speak with my relatives. I get to talk to them quite often. Sometimes we'll even have a chance to FaceTime. As you can imagine, communication lately has been a little difficult, but for the most part.
So what do they report to you? What do they say that their living conditions are like right now?
Well, you can just tell every time you FaceTime them, right? You can tell by just if they were to go ahead and walk outside of their house and look around, you're going to see some beautiful nature because they're from the eastern part of Cuba, which was less affected than obviously Havana in the west. Typically, the rural areas in the east had a better infrastructure, still better education, et cetera. The decay wasn't quite as rapid or as bad. But yeah, I mean, you can just tell in terms of the quality of their everything from their clothes to the homes to, the things that we take for granted in the United States, such as dental aesthetics and overall cleanliness. And this is not to dump on my family. They're all respectable human beings, I promise. But it's just saying that you can just tell there's subtleties that you can just tell in speaking with them and seeing the images behind them or around really town or anything like that. And they'll tell you, oh, today I had to walk 8 kilometers to get to the store because there's no fuel. And, the horse wasn't up for it today if they still have a horse. I mean, it's a whole bunch of things.
So what do they think about the United States? What do you suppose is in the mind of the average Cuban right now vis-a-vis the way they look at the U.S.?
They view the U.S. very favorably. I don't think there's anything negative that I've ever heard from anyone, whether it's my family or not, right? Because you meet people that get here and let's say they arrive in Miami or New York or Tampa or any of these places that traditionally have had Cubans arrive, and they'll tell you there's no country like this. I'll give you a prime example. My cousin, his name is Raiko. Raiko came to the United States because there were a set of protests in 2020. One of his friends happened to be there when the police, or I guess the secret police, were really just attacking the protesters, etc. Long story short with that, his friend was there, then all of a sudden went missing. And I guess it's because the secret police were looking for him and he went into hiding. So they went to my cousin. They asked him, do you know where he is? He said, look, I haven't seen him since this day, but he was a very close friend of his, so they didn't really believe him. They started showing up at his work at his house, at the store, at his child's school, everything looking for him, even though he was working in a government position with the electrical company. And he had to leave the country because at this point he had become afraid for his life. And in doing so,
why were they after him? What were they interested in?
They were interested in the information on his friend. And apparently the friend had, I don't know, allegedly thrown a rock and hit a police officer, in the helmet, which, it's a helmet. It's not even in his head, but apparently that was
I
it.
see.
And because he wouldn't give up the information, because he just didn't have it.
Right.
And the problem is that they don't care. They don't really
Right.
care for that. So the problem was that he then had to leave. He had to ask for political asylum. I actually had to read his personal testimony and help him translate it into English. But since he's come here, he got a job with an engineering firm. He is qualified to purchase a house. He got married to another woman that had come here from Colombia. And he's living the American dream. He's like, there is no country like this. He said, I owned a business in Cuba. I worked for the electrical company. And I worked setting up the electrical grid for the telecommunications company. This was a high-level engineer. And he said, there is no country like this one. There is no country like the United States where you can come here from anywhere, pledge your loyalty to this country, work hard, and achieve these things. And I don't think—
How was he able to escape? How was he able to get out?
That was really tough. He basically had to get on a plane and fly to Nicaragua on a business visa. So because he owned a business, he was going to Nicaragua to buy specialty items.
I see.
Was the cover. And the government didn't deny him that because he had had this storefront for a while. So he literally left the store. He left his store. He left the job. He left everything. He took his sister and his, at this point, 1-year-old nephew and left. And they walked for something like 40 days before they were then able to take a bus and get to the southern border where they were processed. And he went through the processing center, which I think took him 70 something days. So his whole journey was about 120 days.
Half a year.
Yeah, but then I want to clarify something. Then he did file for asylum, and I believe it was granted.
Yes.
So, Umberto, do you think you will return to Cuba at some point? If if the regime topples and the United States can—
I hope to live that long. Yeah. Someday. Yeah. When things stabilize.
Well, it may be sooner than we think. I really do hope so. I lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis. People today, most people don't even know what we're talking about. David's got some inkling of what it was like. But we literally had air raid drills in the second grade where we practiced climbing down out of our desk, getting under the desk. I'm not sure how that was going to protect us from a nuclear bomb, but that's what we did. And then we had days that we practiced running home from school without being able to be picked up by our moms and dads. And it was a tense time that I vividly remember. And of course, Russia was very active in Cuba then, and that's what precipitated the crisis. They were trying to put nuclear weapons in Cuba that would be just, a stone's throw from the United States. And John Kennedy said, no, you're not. And that led us to the brink of war with Russia. But both sides backed down. We went to neutral corners and have mostly lived peacefully ever after vis-a-vis Cuba. But we've always known the threat was just right there. And I do believe that it's time to mend meaningful long-term fences with Cuba, and that requires a government that we can trust.
Yeah, agreed completely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming back on. When this all resolves and you're headed to Cuba, I want to be in your entourage, and we'll go video it, and we'll make a special edition of The Truth.
Yeah, I think we could definitely do that, and it would be great.
No question.
You'll get a chance to not only see some things that, you're going to be pretty privy to locals, but then on top of that, with the language barrier, we'll be able to make sure that isn't the barrier. So it would be exciting. It would be an honor and a privilege, John, to go with you to Cuba and actually go film this and check it out. And so that,
I think that would be really interesting. I would look forward to that. Umberto and David Cancio, they are authors, scholars, historians today, And oh yeah, they're father and son. What a nice relationship you all enjoy. That's to be celebrated. And they have authored Gabriel Locke. It's a 7 book trilogy, right? Or is that a trilogy? Series of books.
Yep. And the second one has come out. It came out in November, and now the next one will come out in April of 2027. So we're very excited. We're hard at work on that one already.
Good job. Good job. All right. Well, thank you, and have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You too. Bye.